IVM.
Hello everyone, welcome to Tech Careers in the new podcast series presented by Accenture. I'm your host Shiladitya Mukhopadhyaya. In this podcast series, we'll get you the latest and greatest in the world of technology that's shaping the future of business as we know it. We're talking intelligent platforms, cloud, AI, blockchain, extended reality, and a whole lot more. Every fortnight on Wednesdays, we'll have for you a hot topic with expert speakers from Accenture talking about top trends in the space, how these are changing the world and creating growth across industries. And more importantly, we'll tell you how you can learn more, build your skills and expertise to grow and stay relevant in your career. So today we're here to talk about data. Data in today's world is a very broad term, but a really interesting topic to talk about. What is data? Essentially the plain facts and statistics collected during the operation of any business. While data itself may not be informative, it's the basis for all reporting, it plays a crucial role in your business, and it, of course, can't be understated in any way. There's a sort of a data revolution taking place right now across the globe. Whatever the industry may be, it could be things like fashion, automotive, retail, insurance, and pretty much every industry is embracing data a lot more. Data collection platforms themselves have evolved. The internet and network-related data is being generated at faster rates than ever before. So what's happening is really that we're overloaded with data. And at the same time, it's super competitive to use this in the right way. And that's what makes this an interesting opportunity to build a career in a space like this. So here goes. To tell us more about this world of data, we have the experts from Accenture, Jayant Swamy, Chief Data Architect of the Data Business Group, and Namrata Maheshwary, Senior Architect, AWS Data Practice Lead at Accenture. All right, welcome to the show, Jayant, Namrata. How are you?
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for making it. I mean, I think we're going to have a fun conversation today. There's a topic of data that we're going to talk about, which is, I think, apart from all the other various forms of way of saying it, I think data is the new oil, as they say, is the one moniker I'll choose. But if you could give us a little bit of background about yourselves before we jump into this conversation.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jayant Swamy. I am Accenture's Chief Data Architect. It's been an interesting journey into the space. Data, as you said, it's the new oil, and there are different monikers that are right now going on. But really, if you think about it, it is in some ways also the life of many companies, and that's really very important, right? We think of it as the bloods, in any system, and it goes through the entire system, carries the information, and that is then used to take actions at various parts. And that's what if you think of an enterprise. And today the enterprise is also getting much more broadly defined, where companies are accumulation of their data and the insights they get from it, not necessarily physical log. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the past, you would think of physical companies with four walls and what was owned by me. Today, it's usually accumulation of the amount of data that I'm getting from places, the amount of insights I can get from it, I can act on it and do it. To give you an example, a company like Uber is essentially getting information from, data from multiple places, acting on it, giving that information to their rideshare drivers, mm-hmm. and then it's being acted upon by somebody else. They have become this platform of consolidation of data, and that intelligence that they get from that is tremendous. Knowing where, who wants what is a great space to be. So data, I think, is, as we've come down this journey, one of the things that we realized was we understood that people need to action data. That was, I think, we all understood the need for analytics. And especially this became even more pronounced once the whole artificial intelligence part came in. And we knew that we needed data. We needed to feed data into AI for it to be successful. But we also realized that the volume or the scale at which data is growing is tremendous. Let me give some data points. It might help you a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. So today, globally, the amount of data in the world today is about 33 zettabytes.
Wow.
Right? So that's just a big number.
Yeah. So I don't even know how many zeros that is.
It's a lot of them. But then we are expecting by 2025, that number to go to 175. But that's not I think if you think about it, the 33 that's today was only 14 a year and a half back.
Oh, wow.
So you see that curve is becoming like a hockey stick.
Yeah.
So the challenge now is this data is fine, but I think we're growing. But how are we going to manage it, grow it, and then actually take action on it? As long as 20 years back, I had that Excel spreadsheet and I could, that was my dimension. That was all the data I had. It was very easy to understand. Today, it's a very different world. And I think that's where I think the challenge of data comes in and the opportunity. I think really more importantly, that's the opportunity as well.
Wow. Namrata, if you could also just give us a little bit of your background and your take on this whole deluge of data that we're in.
So I'm Namrata Maheshwary, and I've been throughout of my career been with Accenture. That's over 15 years now. And being a SOA, BPM or Java architect, I have moved on to the data space and been about 2 to 3 years. And I still think there is so much in this space to conquer. So I started my journey being upskilled and started with, I used to think data is just about RDBMS. And, coming to this group, I understand there's so much more, so much to, do. And in particular, like Jan pointed out, Uber's example, wherein there's so much of data being ingested. So my role entails particularly looking at how do I ensure the processing time reduces. So a lot of our clients that the problems that are facing is more around the long processing times. So that is where my focus is on moving data to cloud to reduce the processing time and bring it to a day or a two. And that's what I primarily focus on.
Wow, a day or a two, I would.
Yeah. And that's the challenge. And that's the challenge we are faced with, because the clients are looking for, instant insights.
Yeah.
While today they are getting those insights only after a week, and that's a big challenge for them.
Wow. In fact, Jayant, if you could add to that, just this whole concept of, the sheer volume of data having increased in the world, and of course contextualizing to individual businesses. What is you would say, state of the art today? Like, where are we in terms of how we understand this space? What kind of methods are we using to further understand it?
And that's very important. I think you hit on a very key point. I think Namrata touched on it. I think the point being, this volume of data is increasing at a tremendous pace. And that pace is what we are struggling to keep up with. So we need a different thinking now. 20 years back when I was, 25 years back when I was starting my career, relatively it was a straightforward thing. It was solvable by putting more humans, and some minimal computing could address it. It was relatively more straightforward computing. In this today's world where this is increasing, every sensor, everything I touch is producing a data element. Yeah. My Fitbit is producing quite a bit of it, and it's all getting captured. Then suddenly I want to find out how I'm doing against my, my friends, am I ahead? And not only that, I want to know it right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait till tomorrow morning, right? Yeah. I think so. Now this is just the user need to consume that information immediately has a certain expectation.
Yeah.
Now that translates back into what do we need to do at the back end, at the technology end, to make this happen? And it takes a lot of things, right? So Namrata talked about cloud. So one of the major things in the past was companies would buy
servers and
hardware and would stick it into there. That became, over time, you could never keep buying enough to keep it there. And then in comes cloud, and I don't need to manage it at every company. There's one company which only business is buying servers and doing that. Right. And they take care of that. So my ability to grow exponentially without worrying about that and worrying about my business.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the data storage business, but I want to be in the business of, be it getting cars, getting riders into cars, getting people into hotel rooms, whatever it is, that's my business.
Correct.
So I want to make sure that I have the data when I need it to take actions when I need it. So my ability to access it where I need it. So cloud provides me this, ability to, this elasticity of growing and getting both storage and compute on demand, right? I think that becomes a very huge thing. The other thing is automation. I think automation is our ability to, we always think of AI from a perspective of, I want to move data to AI. I think it's the other way around as well. Because given the size, and like I said, if you're going to deal with this volumes of data, I cannot throw enough bodies at it.
Yeah.
I have to bring the power of AI intelligence to the data. So then we are talking a different ability to understand this. If I've got call logs from everybody, my ability to understand whether there is something valuable in there and then understand how to act on it is going to be very valuable. So data types have changed. Like I said earlier, it was just text. Today I've got audio, visual, video, so many types of data. So now it's not just the amount, it's a type of data also. So amount of, and the expectation. My expectation is very different from my son's. See, my son suddenly wants everything. He thinks, swiping on an iPad, the next page would automatically give him this information, right? Yeah. He doesn't necessarily understand what's behind what would take to implement it. Yeah. But his expectation is that, they should already be recommending the next slide. When I swipe to the right, is automatically going to recommend the 3 other movies that I should be watching or something like that. And he expects it not just in Netflix, he expects it in other things as well.
Yep. Yeah, the whole user experience has changed from, because it's so abundant, because people have set the bar so high. I think that's where the catch up of technology and processes and everything behind it is what's happening.
Absolutely. And I think it is being led by experience, right? I think I think that has been a big thing. And that's where I think as we go, data-driven experiences are huge. Data supports that. But the experience is critical. And then whatever you need to do, I think now you have the capabilities available, be it getting the data, getting it the right data. Let me not just say data, right? Data is a very broad term. Right. Getting the right data is a very different...
it's a job in itself.
Right? And then making sure that we are able to act on it and then provide the right nugget for you to actually act on it. Right. Because bubbling that information down to filtering it to the right level and to the right context becomes very critical.
So let me ask you, and maybe Namrata, you can also chime in on what does Accenture do in this space, and could you give us some examples of actual implementations, right? I mean, how do you tackle this, huge amount of data and make sense of it? So
we've been looking at the different clients, and what resonates is the intelligent tools, the processes, innovative delivery approach that we have to build the cloud native data platform. So it can process a huge volume of data. There's a particular client which had a very similar problem that I talked about with huge amount of data being ingested, and they were on premise. And their data warehouse was reaching the end of life. So huge problems there, and they wanted a solution within the next 6 months because of the end of life. Now, here's where we stepped in. We analyzed how best we can give a solution, a quick solution, and using our intelligent accelerators, we were able to achieve all of this by building a modern data platform on the cloud. And that we could bring up an analytics COE in less than 6 months, ingesting about 50 terabytes of data and reducing the cycle time to less than 60%. So this was a huge win for us in terms of bringing in accelerators. Jayant, you want to add something?
No, I think the real, if you think about it from a little bit from a business lens, right? I think so they were, as Namrata mentioned, they had a system which was on-prem, legacy. But now that sounds fine, but is my business getting what it wants? That in itself is not the problem, right? The problem that they were facing was for them to now roll out a new product. This was a pharma company, and they wanted more data to come in. They wanted much more. When clinical trials are happening, they wanted faster turnaround. Yeah. They now found for every small change, they had to wait 6 months. For a new product to roll out, they were waiting. So now suddenly they said, I cannot afford to wait this long. Yeah. They are talking cycles. I want to know within days, weeks. I want a turnaround on this information. So hence they were willing to buy. They said, we need a better solution so that I can turn around a clinical trial. I can get the feedback from that. So then is there an investment required in moving there? There is change required in moving. But it is worth it because then their business is absolutely on board to then see that realization of that. Right. So our ability to see, data in itself will not have value in its atomic sense. But combined with the business process and the action it takes, it starts providing a business value.
And towards an outcome.
Outcome, exactly. And that's very important, right? And here's where I think if I'll add to what Namrata said, right? One is, we kept talking volume, right? There are two dimensions. One is the volume of data. Also, the second part is the quality of this data. Yeah. I think those are very important parts, right? even today, when you look at something, do you trust something? If I get something, first thing is, I see it. Second question that I have is
it real?
Is it real? Do I trust it? If I trust it, only will I act on it.
Right.
So then what gives me the level of trust? So my ability to create trust in the data set. Or second, I might get multiple versions of it. Which version should I use? That's why this construct of right data comes in. Right? Which is the right data for my context? What should I use? And that becomes a very important, what we call the veracity. So unless I know the veracity of this data, I don't want to use it, or because I could be making some really poor decisions subsequently. And that's where we have seen a tremendous need for bringing this learning and the power of machines and machine learning to the entire data sets and learn about it. So to give you an example, right, for one of our clients, their client was at the latest cool thing is to have a chatbot. So so they said, we want a chatbot too. So the president set up, So they got a chatbot in place. But 2 weeks into it, or rather first day into it, they actually shut it down because he asked for some information. It gave incorrect information. So then we had to turn it around, and we looked at it, and then we found there were multiple sources of it. The chatbot just picked up the first one and just gave him the information. Nobody sat down to look at as a chatbot, it worked perfectly fine. Right. But they need to go and rationalize the data underneath it to make sure that the right data is being fed to the chatbot. And that became an opportunity in itself. Right. So I think our ability to, discover this data, and then once we discover this large data set, is to catalog it, of course. And then you rationalize it to your context. It becomes very critical. And that's where I think the power of technology is tremendous right now.
Right. So in terms of the more from a more real world perspective, right? You mentioned a company you're solving this, the way you store data and the ability to access it. Then there is making sense of it and rationalizing it. What's the future of this space? Like, obviously we know there's the volumes are growing exponentially, complexity is growing, formats are growing. Where do you see, maybe if you could elaborate, some challenges in terms of meeting customer expectations, and what are the current challenges in the domain overall?
So I think there are I'll come at it from a couple of perspectives. I think one is from an enterprise perspective and from a technology companies and et cetera perspective, but also from an individual perspective, right? Especially as we move forward, I think data is taking on a bigger meaning in itself as individuals and persons, because there is our physical self and there is a digital self. Our digital self is represented by essentially data. And how much of what we want to share, privacy, I think our identity, digital identity, I think a lot of that will get defined. I think we are relatively in the early stages of some of this. I think there'll be more maturity. I think we've seen the first set of these come in terms of where the regulators are getting involved in it as well, right? We saw this in the European GDPR regulation, which came out about a year back. That has had a tremendous impact. Now, several countries across the world, including India as well, is now, taking steps to adopt some of this. So I think protection of this, I think as a future, as you go, data, its protection, its trust, I think is going to be very critical. We need policy. But it also means opportunity in terms of compliance in the past. If I was an enterprise, compliance in the past, regulatory compliance was more of I need to do it. Now it's actually, if you don't do it, it actually can cause hurt to your business. Right. It can really be a physical. Actually, there are fiscal penalties on it. Right. So the financial penalties, for instance, GDPR is up to 4% of your global revenues.
It's huge.
It's huge. It can be, and if you pick up news articles, there are quite a few of them who have been even in the last few weeks who've been penalized for this. So I think this is going to be a tremendous. I think area which we will have to focus. Businesses will have to. They cannot just leave it to the storage servers, right? So they have to own up to the fact that ignorance cannot be. They cannot feign ignorance anymore. Right. That's what the regulations now said. You should be aware.
Right.
And what that leads us to is, for instance, a media company which we were working with, in a Nordics-based media company. They're a conglomerate, right? They are across several hundred companies they've got, which they've grown by acquisitions. But when the GDPR came around, they had to go and mine all this data, figure it out. Now, if they were to do this manually, it would have been a tremendous challenge. But our ability to bring the power of technology and AI and machine learning to their business units, was they could now see a consolidated picture across their units, which was tremendous. So I think the future lies there. Are we completely there? No. And I think as we go forward, what we're going to see is two things. One is, as I said, one is this whole data as a personal thing. And second, as an enterprise, my ability to absorb this technology is going to be important. This absorption comes for that you need capability.
Right.
And capability, what we find is technology is happening, change is happening rapidly. Be it the cloud, be it AI, ML. This is not, very old. In the last 5 years, we've seen literally leaps and bounds of changes, right? So talent becomes our ability to, get the right talent at the right place to do this.
Right.
And expertise to build that becomes very, very critical. But over the next 10 years, I see this is the area of tremendous growth, right? It's going to be the area of opportunity where every company wants to make use of their data and information to and then grow their business. But they want to be doing that. They have to enable their technologies. They have to be able to absorb these technologies. For that, they do need talent. Right. And that's where I think talent is going to be the next, be it right from for the business, for the CEOs to define the business strategy of how to absorb this technology, to defining it for their industry, be it oil and gas, be it retail, and right down to the technologists who build it, whether it's the infrastructure, where the servers, clouds, how to set it up, how to move my data there, how to manage it, to the salespeople, they all need to they'll have different perspectives on it, but we need engineers and architects who can now implement this as well. So this is going to be a full supply chain of, capability that we'll have to rotate people into.
Right. In fact, that leads me to ask my next set of questions, which is exactly what are the careers sort of opening up in this space. And I'll tell you my point of view, like data traditionally, or when I say traditionally, I think just in the last few years itself also was a lot of the purview was for the scientific sort of person, right? There's folks who are data scientists, and they were always counterparts to their technology peers, assisting them with making sense of data and so on. And these were very academic folks, right? I mean, data scientists are, I think, still in short supply. I think everyone wants one. But given what you just said, that there's so much to do in this entire supply chain of, managing data, what are some practical career options today and coming up in the future, which you can talk about?
So what I foresee is architects and data engineers who have skills across the different cloud platforms. That's something which is going to grow because a lot of customers are looking at multi-cloud options. So if you know an AWS, you know Azure, you know Google, I think that's going to be a really good skill to have. And when I think of data engineers, the programmers are definitely going to be required. When I think about a cloud agnostic solution, the data pipeline itself built on different cloud platforms, if I want to lift a data pipeline from one cloud platform and move it to another, I would definitely think of programmers with Python skills or Java, and they would still exist. So these are the skills which definitely would continue to grow.
Do you see like there's a layer of upskilling even in this where the concept of a data scientist comes in? Like, are each of these folks also required to understand data in a different way?
Definitely, because if I come from a Java background, and as a Java programmer, I did not play around with data as such. I did not do data wrangling and so on. But then if I'm in the space of data and I want to cleanse data, I need to find ways of how I would program this better to decrease the time of data wrangling, because like Jayant mentioned, data veracity is a big challenge, right? Now, if there's so much of volume of data being ingested, I need to do it at speed. So the development process has to be quick. The execution has to be quick when I'm, trying to cleanse the data or, trying to identify the veracity issues there.
So if you want to add to that, right? So I think in the past, there were specialist roles for data scientists. I think we are seeing now more nuances to it. For instance, in her role, she's had to pick up machine learning and this as well, because it's no longer just the data scientists who will do machine learning.
Yeah.
Right. So she has had to pick up, as from an engineering perspective, to do machine learning in this. Now the data scientist has become more industry focused. So if I was to say, so on one side, how to apply that to the statistical nuances around, say, an optimization for a recommendation engine. So the data scientist is starting to become more nuanced,
right,
in that industry context as well. So I think the industry and context is becoming very relevant in that. Mm-hmm. But then there's a bigger space around it. I think the technology and this will be the large chunk of it, because it's just the amount of work required in this will be more. So definitely the engineering and the scientist and data scientist end will be the larger piece of it. But also there'll be the application of it, right? How do you consume this? Mm-hmm. So that's the whole advisory strategy piece, which is going to be needed. So the traditional MBAs of how do they consume this data and then translate it into action, right? I think that's going to be also as important. So my ability to have this vision, lay it out, implement it, and then whatever is coming out of these kind of newer systems, my ability to action it, these insights which are coming out, action those, and then implement. That's where the business will start seeing the value. So I think it's the entire what we used to see, be it right from engineering to business to strategy. You're going to see across that entire spectrum, you're going to see value, even including, for instance, medical fields, right? Today, medical fields are there is remote healthcare which is happening. So our ability to provide that, what kind of information is required, somebody's got to design it, implement it, and then somebody's going to you still need a mechanism to convert that insight into action.
Yeah, everything is becoming data driven in that sense, right? Every role is becoming data driven.
Yeah, definitely, I think it's you're definitely leading with data. I think in many cases, I think so. But the question becomes again, you need the right data at the right time for it to be effective.
Correct. All right. So just to give the listeners also a little perspective of what you would recommend they jump into if they wanted a career in this space. Some tips, some potential upskilling that they should look at doing across the board.
Namrata, you go first.
So there's a lot of reading material available on. Just Google any of the terms, like a lot of different new data warehouses have been coming up, like Snowflake, Splice Machine, which is you can start reading up on that. Upskilling is really easy because there's a lot of material available, and within Accenture what I've seen is there's so much of leadership support around upskilling. So we've been doing a lot of upskilling around AWS and all of these different areas in cloud as well. So that's one what I see, and apart from that, I guess it's you need to be passionate about technology to be able to upskill, because you need to be more open. I understand it's going to be a bit difficult at the beginning when you want to move from some, you're used to a specific technology, but when you want to move to a new zone, there's always this kind of fear, will I be successful or will I fail? But then I think it takes a bit of time to learn, and there's a lot of material available, so it's not that difficult there.
Yeah, I think you just have to be open to change, I think. So, when I started my career, and then my career, initially I changed. I had to kind of upgrade myself once in 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. I started as a C++ programmer back in my day, and then Java and all those things, I think. But then I think in the last 10 years, that pace has become, so it became then every 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. Now I think it's much more. So I think, but it also means that I think our ability to, just because there's something new and flashy every 6 months, doesn't mean we have to be aware of it, but also we need to be careful about how we absorb it. Make sure that we're building depth in certain areas while being aware of certain things. I think building depth also in certain areas is very critical. Mm-hmm. Pick your area of this, like there's so many areas in this entire data value chain, right? So pick your area of this and go deep. I think become an expert in that area, right? So if you're going to pick, say, Python, become an expert at Python. Right. If you're becoming, in terms of this, you're going to pick up, say, either some visualization tools and techniques. pick that and go deep into it, right? Or you're picking machine learning, just algorithms you're picking up, go deep into it, right? Then you're getting into a area of integration becomes a huge. Data integration is a topic by itself. So I think you'll find a tremendous area. Similarly, on the business side as well, our ability to interact with these things is also as important.
Of course.
My ability to understand, say, the procurement cycles and map it back into the underlying data sets. I think so. There's a tremendous space, but our ability to know it is what will differentiate us.
Superb. Thank you so much, Jayant, Namrata. This was an amazing discussion. I think we have tried to make sense of this world of data in these few minutes together. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, thank you. This
Thank
is great.
you.
Go data.
Thank you so much, Jayant and Namrata. That was a very interesting conversation. I think the real-world examples and information about data that you both shared, of course, were really insightful. We covered a lot today, and starting with getting the right data, Accenture's role in this space, and of course, challenges faced in using of intelligent tools, data warehousing, what's next in the field of data, all the way till, of course, the career opportunities here that we have. So thank you so much. It was really interesting, and I hope everyone listening obviously also had a great time. And I'm hoping that along with this, a lot of people are inspired to take up a job in the space of data in their professional careers. To everyone else listening in, if you're excited about what we discussed here today, and if you're interested in exploring careers with Accenture, check out the open positions at careers.accenture.com. Next episode, we're talking quality engineering. Until then, I'm your host Shiladitya on Tech Careers in the New, the podcast series presented by Accenture.
Hello, everybody. We have a brand new daily podcast we're working on with Bloomberg Quint. All you need to know provides the top news on business, markets, and the economy so that you can stay ahead of the curve. Tune in every morning on BloombergQuint.com, the IBM podcast app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.